Mr. Triano, can you lead us in the pledge, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces, our first responders, our veterans, those fighting the good fight in Ukraine, and those suffering from the military conflict in the Middle East. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Okay, so Diane, can you open?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Is there anyone to open the meeting for the Board of Finance this evening?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion to come out of recess for the town council.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. All right. So,
Who is it?
so can we?
Tom and Chris, right?
Yep.
All three.
Thank you. Okay. So, I'd like to welcome the Board of Education here, and I know we have Leslie as the chair. We have Dr. Parlato and Anthony. And if we can, because we do have some new members on the Board of Finance, if we could kind of just go around the table and all introduce ourselves. So, Brian?
Good evening. Brian Whitfield, Wolcott Lane, Gable, Connecticut. Paul Murphy, Town Council.
Solomon Kowitz, Town Council.
Rolando Castro, Board of Finance.
Walter Bear, Board of Finance.
Stephanie Barker, Recording Secretary. Diane Clay, Board of Finance.
Pete Bass, Mayor?
Katie Francis, Vice Chair.
Mary Jane Lundgren, Town Council.
Bob Gambino, Town Council.
Alexandra Thomas, Town Council.
Joe Triano, Board of Finance.
Jody Gregorio, Board of Finance.
And if, Dr. Parlato, I know you do have some Board of Education members and some staff, if you'd like to introduce them as well. It's some behind you.
So Leslie Sarich is
Yep.
board chair. We have Anthony Giovanoni, he's our director of physical services. Terry Kavanaugh, director of human resources. Randy Schofield, Board of Education. Sarah Herring, Board of Education. Tammy McInerney, Board of Education. Wendy Fallenbach, Board of Education. Brian McCauley, Board of Education. Holly Hollander is our assistant superintendent. And then we have some of our principals. Laura Olson, director of student special services. And we have principals. Who else am I missing? Mr. Turner is our director of IT.
Great, thank you. To Madam Chair and Superintendent Parlato. Oh, I'm sorry, public participation, we did have someone. Do we have someone like to speak?
Thank you.
Yes. My name is Jackie Eaton. I'm at 6 Redwood Lane. Some of you heard this speech at the Town Council on the 10th, and I'm just here again to reiterate. I'm also the founder of ACT Local. It's an indivisible group. We were formerly ACT Local New Milford. We are now ACT Local Northwestern Connecticut, and we're part of the Connecticut Indivisible organization. So I am here today to ask this council to support and defend public education. I'd like to thank the Board of Education for their hard work in creating this year's budget, and I urge the council to support the BOE budget. Public education is under attack at the federal level. Our elected Congresswoman has been denied access to the Department of Education, the building in Washington, and as we wait to see how federal funding cuts will harm public education, it is critical that our towns ensure that our students, our residents, are not the casualties. We all just pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. That flag belongs to me, to you, to our students, to our immigrants, and to all of us. Sorry.
You're good. Take your time.
I'm
Take your time.
Sorry.
That's okay, that's okay.
Sorry. Regardless of political affiliation, So I'm here to ask you all to please, and our residents too, to support and protect public education, to support and protect free speech, and to denounce book bans in our schools, to support and defend the Connecticut Trust Act to keep schools and students safe against the federal ICE agents. And a safe and well-funded public education supports all of us and our freedoms by supporting our future leaders. Please pass the BOE budget as submitted, and please protect public education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Whoops. Okay.
We're all set, Mayor?
Madam Chair, Superintendent
you.
Parlato?
Thank you for having us tonight. As many of you know, this is my first time sitting in this seat, so please bear with me. I've got two great people with me that are going to help me get through this. So we're going to start. We're going to begin tonight with the Board of Education goals for this year. The board developed and adopted these goals in August of 2024. Each goal stands for an area of focus that we will use to guide our decisions and help us monitor the district's progress. Our goal areas of focus for this year are student achievement, family and community engagement, budget development and fiscal management, district and school environment, and district workforce. The budget development process begins in October. We use the 2021 district enrollment study as well as current enrollment figures to project how many students will be in each grade level. The schools and departments develop their budgets by getting input from staff members, and then principals and directors meet with the superintendent and the fiscal services director to review their requests. In December and January, the superintendent and cabinet decided what will be included in the superintendent's proposed budget. There are 3 budget hearing nights in January where the proposed budget is presented. The Board of Education then deliberates and adopts the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. This process ensures that many voices are part of the budget development each year. We'll begin our presentation of the 25-26 budget numbers with an explanation of fixed cost. Fixed costs are required items and elements that carry forward from one year to the next. First, there are the contractual salary increases for our employees across the district's 7 bargaining units. Salary increases are negotiated between the Board of Ed and each bargaining unit until ratified by the board and the bargaining unit once agreement is reached. Next are contractual benefit increases, which is for health insurance. It is important to note that 78.3% of the entire Board of Education's budget is made up of employee salary and benefits. We are in the 2nd year of our contract for busing with All-Star Transportation, and this amount represents a 4% increase. Our utilities rate increase is established by the town. There is a small increase for our student accident insurance, cybersecurity insurance, and liability insurance for auto and property. So fixed costs, which are required from one year to the next, represent an increase of 3.8%. What did I say?
3.38.
3.38 of the 24-25 current budget. Let's look at the board's overall percentage, knowing that fixed costs represent 3.38% increase over the current 24-25 budget. The remainder of the board's proposed request stands at 0.55%, or an additional $408,456 over the 24-25 budget. With fixed costs and additional needed items, the Board of Education's proposed increase is $2,890,128, a 3.93% increase over the 24-25 budget. As a point of comparison, the board adopted budget percentage increase for 24-25 was 3.87, and in 23-24 an increase of 4.88%. Next, we will review the board adopted budget additions and reductions for 2025. We will start with the salary reductions. The superintendent proposed and the board adopted the following salary reductions for 2025. minus 2.0 certified staff in grades K through 5 due to enrollment, minus 5 certified staffs in grades 6 through 12 due to enrollment, minus 3 paraprofessionals in grades K through 12 due to enrollment. This is a reduction of 10 positions equaling $597,375 in salaries. What items and personnel did not make it into the superintendent's proposed and board's adopted budget? This slide shows the school and department's requests that were reduced prior to the 25-26 budget being finalized. Requested items that were not included are necessary reading curriculum materials, extremely helpful staff such as kindergarten paraprofessionals, student support staff, and teachers to increase our course offerings based upon students' interest, and better functioning music supplies, robotics curriculum material, and added reading material for the upper grades.
So on the right-hand side there, you see the reductions from the school and department requests for literacy curriculum, $965,000 requested personnel that were not included in the superintendent's proposed budget, and then $64,550 of other materials and supplies. So that's $1.2 million reduced from the school department requests.
With fewer students in the district over time, we have had to reallocate personnel and meet student needs. This chart shows the number of students over the past 10 years, along with the number of students who are English learners, students who qualify for free or reduced lunch, and students who are in need of special education services. While the overall student population has decreased, the levels of need within our student body has increased. For example, the number of English learners has almost tripled in the last 10 years, and now 1/3 of New Milford Public School students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Having higher levels of students' needs requires us to look carefully at the numbers and type of staff that we employ throughout the district. This chart shows our district's high-need students broken out school by school. You can see the percentage of each school's population that falls into one of the 3 high-needs categories. Again, we know that increased student needs equates to the needs for additional resources and student support. Given our Board of Education goals and the superintendent's recommendations to continue the district's progress, these are the personnel requests for 2025. Do you want me to read them all, or is everybody good to read them? Want me to read them? Okay. We're asking for 1 armed school security officer at New Milford High School. Provides an armed security coverage where monitors do not, female officer potential. 1 career and technical education teacher at New Milford High School. This would restore the position that was reduced in 2024, increase trade-based courses. 1 social worker at Schaghticoke, replaces effective school solutions with our own employee, more coverage for student needs and savings. 1 multilingual learner teacher at Schaghticoke, increase in student needs. Special education teacher at Schaghticoke, increased need for support for students' mental health and testing. 1 special education teacher in Sarah Noble. 1 interventionist from Title I to General Fund, increase in severity of student needs, assist with PPT meetings. Grant funds should not supplant the general fund. We're looking 0.50 school psychologist at Sarah Noble, increased in student needs and number of PPT meetings. And the other half of her time or his time would be at Hill and Plain. Increase in number and severity of mental health and academic needs, increased testing. A 0.4 assistant principal at Hill and Plain makes the current 0.6 position to 0.1 increased student needs. Central office secretary split between the assistant superintendent's office and central registration registry. For every school district, there are unfunded state and federal mandates, and here are some examples of these unfunded mandates and how they impact the budget. Districts must provide special education services until the end of the school year when a student reaches 22.
So you can see the increase in cost there on the right-hand side by the change in the legislation that requires us to provide services until the end of the school year for when a student reaches 22.
Special education services to private school students, Faith Academy. It's a 0.33 full-time teacher and 0.4 for a nurse. Districts must provide a reading curriculum model approved by the State Department of Education, appointment of a school medical advisor. Districts must adopt and implement an indoor air quality program that provides for ongoing maintenance and facility reviews necessary for the maintenance and improvement of the indoor air quality of its facilities. As you can see, these are generally expensive items that are required and are the responsibility of the local boards of education. Another aspect of the district's budget that requires some explanation is the cost of out-of-district placement. We have 36 students whose needs are severe enough to require placement in a special education school outside of New Milford Public Schools. On this slide, there are 6 examples of students who are placed out of district. The final cost to the district and the amount of reimbursement we receive from the state of the education of these students. There is a formula the state uses to determine the reimbursement. We do not receive 100% of the cost of the student's education as reimbursement. You can see the significant budget impact from these examples as we provide an appropriate education for all of our students. And to summarize, the board and the superintendent have developed a thoughtful and responsible budget to present to this community. Fixed costs represent an increase of 3.38, while additional requests make up the increase of 0.55% for the overall increase of 3.93%. I'd like to thank you for your attention, your consideration, and we will take any questions.
Thank you, Leslie. Anybody like to start it off? Mayor.
I'd like to start with a simple question. I was an agricultural head teacher at Region 1 for a long time, and I know that Chippewa is offering Ag Ed to New Milford students. I could not see any place in here where you have either supported that, paid for it, or you have students that are enrolled.
So yes, we have 28 seats that we offer to New Milford students to go to Chicago.
All right, but it's not, you have to pay something, don't you?
Sure, that's in our budget, and Mr. Giovanoni will get you the exact amount, but yes, it's in our budget. 28 seats.
Okay.
That is in the Department of Instruction. And the total number of seats.
29 or 28.
Let me just double check the number here real quick. Yes, the total that we're supporting for agri-science tuition in this budget in front of you is roughly $197,000.
That's not a, it's in this budget.
Yes.
And how many students?
I think that's 29.
29.
The tuition piece is $6,823. That is an amount that's established by the state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Walter.
Just a few comments. We're not controlled by a lot of things. One of the things is special education. You got at Northville almost 20% of students without disabilities. That's enormous. And if we got outsourced one kid maybe for $100,000, that's a tremendous impact. And I don't envy you guys doing that and how you juggle the balls to take care of that. And I just, you know, we got Hillen playing 15%, 16%, 19%, 19%, 14%. But we have to provide education for these kids, whatever it costs, because we own them. We can't throw them under the bus, and we got to take care of them. So God bless you guys when you are juggling the ball. Let me ask another question. Staff reduction. How critical is your staff reduction overall?
So are you referencing the slide that with the minus
No,
10?
you kind of made an overview of staff reduction. And I guess that's my question to you.
So because.
How much of
yeah.
an impact is that? You know, you got this department, you got this department, you got this department, and then you chop, 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 chop. What does that do for the system?
So in terms of our K-5 teachers,
Okay,
we look very carefully at the enrollment numbers that we have. And so we realized that we were able to reduce 2 positions for grades K to 5
okay,
and still maintain favorable class sizes.
okay.
So there is not an impact of where we'll have 30 students in a class at all. And so we look very carefully at that enrollment starting in October, all the way through December, and we realized that we could make that reduction without there being a significant impact on class size.
I notice adult ed is gone. Is that gone?
No, we have adult ed still. That's in your budget, yes?
Okay, I'll keep quiet. All right,
Yes.
one more question. Everybody's got to understand, looking at the chart again, you got to understand we are crippled with unfunded mandates. And you guys, when you deal with that, nobody understands, well, I shouldn't say that. Public education is so fluid because you don't know what's going to cost you throughout the course of the year. And you know, I'm all in on public education, trust me. I taught public high school for 38 years. I taught 2nd grade, I taught 7th grade, I taught 8th grade, I taught 9th grade. I taught 10th grade, I taught 11th grade, I taught 12th grade. I'm all in on public education. Well, when my salary started, it was this tiny, but this is okay. I'm all in. And God bless what you do. I'm all in. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Sal? And then Brian.
I would like to know how many students do we have? How many students do we have altogether?
Altogether, we use the October 1st number, so it's on this slide, you can see. For 24-25, as of October 1st, we had 3498. So that's in the very bottom row.
3,498 students altogether
That's correct.
in all schools. How much does it cost per student for New Milford taxpayers?
We can give you the exact number. Is it 19806? Or did I make that up? Let's see.
The state of Connecticut calculates the net cost per pupil.
How much do we calculate it? How much do we pay for the per student? With the 3,498, how much would it cost to have a student in our school district?
23,000.
John 23.
Right, 23?
Really
much. That should be all good.
It's gone up like $10,000.
I don't know. One second.
Okay, figure it out.
if we're taking the proposed budget that's in front of you of 76,350,587 and divide that by roughly 3,400 kids, it's 22,456. And that'll be different than the number you find at the state, because the state calculates it slightly differently, taking out special education costs as one of the factors.
That's no problem. So almost 22,500 cost per one student. Now, in terms of, so for $22,000, $22,500 in this niche, or whatever the rating in state, where are we from the standpoint of how good is the New Milford School District? Is it A, B, C, D?
Sure.
Which?
I have not referenced that particular site. That's certainly one measure of a school system.
Well, it's the measure that everybody looks for when they move to the towns or move
Well,
out
it's
of
one
the
measure
towns.
they look for, I'd say,
That's
yeah.
the measure. It is in jobs, that's how they look for niche and the job. So anybody knows how well we do it?
I can't give you a letter grade, no. I don't know the answer to that in terms of letter grade. I can give you
So we don't
different
know
measures.
how well we perform.
I know
basically.
very
Is
well
that
how we
true?
perform, yes. I
What's
do.
that?
I can tell you how well we perform, but I can't give you a letter
Based on
grade.
what measurement?
Compared to our district reference group, which are towns that are similar to us.
I don't know what sound similar to us is. Based on the state of Connecticut, where are we in the rank of the school districts?
They don't really rank it like that. The state of Connecticut does not rank school districts that way. There are too
So we
many
don't know where we
variables.
stand.
What?
We don't know where we stand.
We
For
know where we stand within
$22,500, we
similar
don't know where we
towns.
stand.
I can tell you where we stand within similar towns. I can't tell you where we stand in the whole state. There's too many variables and too much variation across communities.
Okay, so how about reading score for $22,500? What is the reading score in a New Milford School District?
What measure are you looking for? So
Give me any measure. I was looking at it initially, so I know what the score is back over there.
So if we look at our performance index, which is the way that the state reports on every single school district's performance, then we score at a 63.9.
How about math? What do we get for $22,500 in terms of math?
56.3.
So we're pretty much on the F side.
That's not necessarily accurate because the target score there is 75. The denominator is 75, not 100.
If that's a percentage, whatever, however you want to calculate it, on reading side, we're D minus, and the math, we're straight F.
I don't agree with the way you're calculating that, but the denominator is
it then?
75. The denominator is not 100.
So you're saying 56 is what?
56.3 divided by 75, not 100.
Right, so what is it in A, B, C, D?
I don't know, I'd have to figure it out. I'm just telling you the way the state reports it to us is the target index score is 75. So in math, we have 56.3.
Okay.
Overall, for students in grades 3 through 8 and 11, and in English language arts, we score at 61.6.
All right, so for the money that you're asking, and the $22,500, how did this score improve since last year?
So these are the indicators the state of Connecticut uses for all districts in our state. They're called the district accountability indicators. So they look at your English language arts performance, math, science. They look at how much you grow in English language arts and math.
What's the number? What are we in that rank?
I just want to finish explaining the indicators first. They look at the progress towards English proficiency for students who are learning English. They make sure that ninth graders are on track to graduate. They look at your graduation rate over 4 years. They look at 6 years for students who are high needs. They look at your absenteeism rate, the fact that students have access to the arts. They look at physical fitness, the fact that students are prepared for college and career, and they look at how many students go to a 2 or 4 year school. Those are the indicators by which we judge our district. So this shows We increased on the left-hand side in the following indicators. And you can read those, I won't read them to you.
By what? Increased by what? Plus and minus, doesn't mean that you have no matrix, basically.
I do, I mean, that's a different presentation that we did in November. So those are slides that we'd be happy to share with you.
Yeah,
That
well,
shows you the exact numbers.
Yeah, well, you're asking for $76,000, we don't know whether or not there's an improvement in our school system.
So I would say, using my experience and my expertise, that on the left-hand side, there is an improvement in our school system if you look at the left.
What's the percentage?
Again, that slide is something that will get to you. I don't have that exact slide here.
So maybe we should call off this meeting and come back when we have the information. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But if we don't have the information, what would we discuss it right now?
So broadly is an overview. This is the information that we have prepared for tonight.
Okay, so you have no information, I'm asking. Okay, so $22,500, we don't know how we performed last year versus last before and the year before, we just don't know. We have pluses and minuses, some words, but what does it mean? I don't know. It means something. It depends how you interpret it. We don't have information, you said that, so I'm not going to press you on that one. We don't have it, that's all. So you're asking for, how much was the salary increase for the district in general? 3.5 thousand? I mean 3.5%? What was it?
It depends on the bargaining unit, but we can get that for you right now. We have that in the budget book.
Oh, yeah, it's on the budget book, page 6 in the board budget book. Salaries are going up 1.4 million, roughly, 3.43%. Now that's blended against many different bargaining units.
So we don't know how we performed, but we're still asking for the salaries increase. So what is the social justice we need?
What was that?
What is the social justice? We don't know how the school performs, and you're asking for an increase of money or salary.
I'm telling you how the school district is performing without specific numbers,
You don't
but
have
I'm happy to provide you with the specific numbers separately. This
Okay.
is what we have prepared for today.
Okay, so I don't have an answer to any of the questions I have. I don't have a question. Okay, at least not.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Joe?
Superintendent Carlotta, how are you doing?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a
Good.
great day. So, my kids, I'm gonna start with them.
Yes.
All right? They love the schools, by the way. They gave me 3 questions they wanted me to ask. You don't have to answer them, but I want to ask them anyway.
I tell the students in New Milford Public Schools I answer their emails first, so I'm happy to hear what they have to say.
All right.
What's for lunch?
No, they know that. they have that on their wall in their bedroom, and they check the boxes they want to eat. We know about that already. All right. Why is the middle school lunch shorter than the elementary school lunch?
All lunches should be 30 minutes at least based upon state legislation.
I know, but for some reason the middle school lunches are shorter. This is an injustice that the middle schoolers would like rectified. All right.
Great. I'll get right on it.
Is the start, my daughter heard the start time of middle school might be changing to start later. I guess there's something going on at the state level. Is this true or is this a fabrication?
There's always a raised bill or two where they talk about adolescent learners going to school later, but it generally doesn't get the legs to pass.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
I'll tell her to stay tuned.
Yes.
All right. And then my son said, can we make math time shorter and recess longer?
Well, I mean, if you look at the right-hand side of the column over there, we
I'll
have
tell
to
him
keep the
we-
math, yeah, we have to keep the math.
All right, so,
Yeah.
so on to some of my more serious questions, okay? I guess I'll start with this one because we have this one up, the accountability indicators.
Yeah, this, I'll have the whole list.
Now,
Yep,
well, go back to the screen you were just on with the pluses and the minuses.
sure.
Now, I mean, I don't want to be overcritical because, like I said, I think the school district has been trying to work towards, you know, meeting and exceeding its goals, right, and trying to get better little by little. And you're coming out of a very difficult time with COVID, kids being home, and that's got to have a very drastic impact on their educational outcomes, right? But if I had to choose one of those 2 columns as the key indicators where I wanted to see pluses and minuses, I would like to see overall math performance, overall science performance for high needs kids, college readiness, right? Career readiness, high school graduation, 4-year graduation rates, and physical fitness, there is no reason those should be not pluses. As far as overall district performance from whatever metric, I could care less.
It's all those combined.
Right, but like on that right-hand side where you have the decreases, those should be your strongest factors. You know?
I
Like,
agree.
like chronic absenteeism. Who cares if the kids miss 25 days if they have better math, science, and physical fitness performance and are on track to graduate from college? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how many
Unfortunately, though,
days.
that doesn't always correlate, so a student misses a lot of time.
Correlation is not causation, but yeah, I get it, right? So that's my stump for that part, right?
Okay.
Um,
Please know that, I mean, and I'm saying this generally, right? When I present something like this, I'm not hanging my hat totally on the left-hand side. I know that there's improvement we have to do.
No,
I'm working towards that improvement, and so is the entire staff of the public school system every single day.
it's just not, it's not a great slide. Anyway, slide 13, I have a question about something that you mentioned in there. This is personnel requests.
Right here?
Yep, right in the middle there, we have the special education teacher and the intervention. It says grant funds should not supplant the general fund. What does that mean?
So, when we do receive some grant funding within the school district,
Mhm.
and so that comes from the federal government.
Right.
You're not supposed to replace general fund local dollars and say, oh, the grant will cover that. The grant fund should be used for quote unquote extras or things that enhance your school district. It shouldn't take the place of local dollars.
So we shouldn't assume that revenues that we're getting are revenues that can be used for the educational thing that they're designated for?
As long as it doesn't take the place of what should be the general fund operational budget. It should be something that enhances that. Those are the rules of, it's called the title grant or the consolidated
Okay.
grant. Yep,
I'll have to title grant, I'll write that down.
yep, or the consolidated is Title I, Title II, Title III.
Okay. Okay. I know we had a conversation about this separately, but I'm just curious what's going on with the buses. As a parent in the district, the bus performance has been absolutely horrific. I mean, and I'm lucky, you know, I'm blessed to be able to have, you know, myself and my wife home to get the kids on the bus. Mostly my wife, I'll say that. Like, she's 99.9% of the time the one who gets the kids on and off the bus. But we had to go like 2 weeks with one car because the motor in my car blew, and it was terrible. I mean, I could not imagine not being able to do that and having to deal with 5 a.m. phone calls, 11 in the afternoon, you know, text messages. Like, if I had to leave Hartford from work to get, like, I'm missing a day of work, you know? It's just, so what's up with that? Are we moving towards resolving that issue? Is there something in the works? Do we have clawbacks? Are we getting supplemental buses? Like, what's going on?
So both of those things are true. So there is part of the contract that we have with All-Star Transportation where if there is a late bus, there is a clawback that comes to the district.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a good thing. It doesn't make them be able to hire drivers any more quickly. And so the fundamental cause of the late buses was missing drivers. And those people are hired by All-Star Transportation, right? So in a way, we're at that mercy. They tell us that they're working on it. Certainly, we've been working with the board and the board's attorney to figure out the various avenues that we can take.
Okay. So you're working towards something.
Yes.
And we're getting something back when they screw up.
Yes.
Okay,
We're
good.
very close to having an app also for parents to see where the bus is.
That's cool.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know
Believe
if
it
that's
or
a good thing or a bad thing, but okay, I'll leave that up to the security professionals.
Yes.
All right, last question, if that's okay, if I'm not going too far. So, what were the increases in educational outcomes year over year? Like specifically, like where did our district excel? There's got to be something.
I will tell you, let's go back. Oops, I went the wrong way. Our biggest area of growth in these indicators was the academic growth for English language arts and math. So that showed that students, while they might not have met the grade level standard exactly, they made more than a year's growth in a year's time. They're catching up from the COVID time, essentially. So the biggest increases that we saw in grades 3 through 8 were in the way that the kids are growing, which is a nice indicator for a school district that has had quite a bit of turnover in the last decade.
Yeah.
It shows that we're starting to grow in the same direction.
So to put that a different way, because
Yes?
maybe not as eloquent, right? In grades 3 through 8,
Yes.
you were able to have your students outperform the expected one-year growth for that group.
That is correct.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they might have met the grade level benchmark, but they grew more than a year in a year's time.
Right. If they started at a deficit,
Correct.
they were catching up.
Yes.
We should lead with that.
100%. Yes.
Ryan?
Joe, you finished?
Oh, I'm done. Sorry, I think.
My first thing I'm going to direct at you.
Oh.
You made a comment before about missing 25 classes, whatever. The first time I ever heard the term senior cut day, I reflected back to when I was in high school, and that meant I was suspended. Totally different thing. I congratulate you all on your presentation tonight. I'd like to tell you that I have been so blessed in my family. I have 4 teachers. My eldest daughter, her husband, their daughter, my son, 95 years collector teacher.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I personally believe that our teachers do not receive the support that they should be getting, not only from parents, but from inside teaching itself. They also do not receive the respect. That having been said, in the early 1950s, I was in the 5th grade, and I came home from school one day, and as usual, there were 3 newspapers on the living room table. My grandfather required we read 2 or 3 every single day, the Daily News, the Daily Mirror, and the Journal American. And the Daily Mirror had something to the effect of adding that the last dinosaur had just died the week before, so you know where I was. The other one, the Daily News, was starting a series that week on education in the public schools in New York City, and the heading said, I never remember the whole inside, but the heading I've never forgotten, why can't Johnny read? 1952. Why can't Johnny read? So the schools tried to do different things to correct that. They played with marks to make their schools look better when they got caught doing that. We went to social promotion. If the poor child couldn't keep up with work, promote him anyway. Don't want to make him feel bad. Promote him. And then we went to high schools doing remedial reading. Now, these are kids coming in from grammar school, can't read, do remedial reading. Then we went to colleges doing remedial reading because the high school kids couldn't read. Somewhere along the line, a great senator from Illinois, Everett Dirksen, said, you spend a few billion here, a few billion there, sooner or later it becomes real money. Well, when I was growing up, I guess hundreds of millions were spent. Real money for education. Now we're spending billions in education, not counting what the unions get. And we still have too many Johnnies that can't read. What's wrong with the educational system that we have in our country that we spend all this money and Johnnies still can't read? Why don't we get rid of what's going on in education today and go back and give our teachers the tools, proper tools, and have them work with parents who have the right to know what's going on in schools. And put them together to create a proper educational system. Let's stop worrying about what the pronouns are And let's go back to what the proper nouns are. It was funny, yesterday I was speaking with somebody and I was playing a joke on somebody and I was talking, I did this for tonight. What is the only proper noun in the English language that when you change it from a proper noun to a regular noun, you change pronunciation and meaning? That would work.
Mr. O'Brien, I know.
I told you before. What is it, Walter?
Polish is also polish.
This young lady who was in college did not know what a proper noun was.
You want to speak
She
Polish?
went
Ja mogę
through-
po polsku uciec też.
She went through the school system here in New Milford. I have 6 of my 10 grandchildren went through the New Milford school system. Last year, South Korea was named #1 country in education. 98.8% of their people are literate. 70% of their people go to college. This is the greatest country in the world, and we can't do it. We sit here, we say, oh, we're going to attain 45% this year, 47 in math, 50%. That's crap. Where the hell are we? We should be in 70. I went to school, when I was in the 5th grade in the 50s, 70 some odd years later, we're almost no better than we were when I went to school. But we're spending billions of dollars on education. There's something wrong with our educational system, not our teachers. There's something wrong with our educational system. How many more decades is it going to be before we get to 60%? That's scary. I'm not going to be around. I don't give a damn. I'm not going to be around. But my children and grandchildren will be. And this is a shame that our country isn't up there at 80 and 90%. There are only like 9 countries that have 100% literacy. And I can only name 2 of them that I recognize. Finland is #1. Why the hell are we behind all these countries? Because, never mind, I don't want to get political. Because we were political before, I'm not going to get political. But that's where the problem is. It's there's too much politics with unions and everything else, telling our teachers, we went through, as I spoke before, social promotion. Look what COVID did to us. Because we kept our children out of school. Europe didn't keep them out of school, they went to school. And look where they are compared to us. Is money so important that we put our kids down? That's where we are. I apologize for the things I made.
Thank you, Brian.
You do a wonderful job, congratulations.
And Mary Jane and then Murph. Mary Jane?
Hi, thank you all for coming. I can't thank you enough for everything you do with our children in the school system. I totally support your budget. I think it's come in as a very reasonable budget. And I would hate to see any cuts made to this budget, exactly for the reason that he's talking about. The more you cut educational budgets, the weaker our students are, the weaker our adults are, the weaker our country is. So we cannot cut any more dollars out of education. I want to commend you for a lot of the programs that you have, your collaboration. I think this gentleman was talking about families and schools and teachers, and you've got this great program that increases the collaboration with family engagement. I just think that is just absolutely phenomenal. And increased involvement of the families in the whole educational process. I just think it makes a huge difference for our children. I saw that your bullying is down by, what, 80%, I think, is it? Which is phenomenal.
In terms of the verified acts.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is absolutely fantastic. I'm worried about the cuts that are going to be coming. I don't know how any of the school districts are going to be dealing with some of these cuts, especially like for the free lunches. I think with the cuts in Medicaid and families really struggling, the free lunches are so important, and I don't know exactly how you're going to, balance that. Do you have any idea what you're going to do about that if even more money is cut from those free lunches?
So at the state level, there is discussion of universal free lunch and potentially universal free breakfast. We'll have to see how far that gets within the legislature. So that's where it stands on the state level.
Okay,
Yep.
that's awesome. I think you've done a great job. My kids have gone through the school system, have great jobs, and it's all because we've supported education. And where would we be without our doctors, our nurses, our teachers, all these professional people that come out of our school system and come back and take care of us and educate our next generation. So thank you all for everything you do. You work really hard. And I think the Board of Education works the hardest of any board in the whole town of New Milford. You get a lot of credit.
Hours of volunteer service. Yeah,
Yeah.
They really make my work much easier. So yeah, I appreciate their hours for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Murph? And Diane, did you want to go after Murph? Okay.
Good evening, Dr. Plata.
Hello.
Before we start, I wanted to let the public know, listening, and members here, you are the 8th person that we've had as superintendent of this school system since 2015. And I'm going to handcuff you to your desk as I've had the enjoyment of going through the school system, walk through with Alex over there, a few others. And I've seen a great improvement in the cleanliness of the schools, the order of the students, not screaming and carrying on down the hallways. But there's a point where I've got to start saying there's got to be light at the end of the tunnel. When we did the POCD a couple of years back, I was in charge of that. We have a decrease in the population projected to drop to, well, probably 25,000 people in 2040. With that in mind, obviously, the school teachers and employees with the benefits make up $58,287,000 of a $73,000 budget.
Correct.
That is on the backs of the citizens of New Milford that are 45 years of age or over, 45% of us. Many of those are living on fixed income. Many of them are living in homes with still mortgages. Some of them are living paycheck to paycheck. Some of them are living credit card to credit card. And that scares me because I don't want to see some of our elderly have to move out of here because of taxes. I asked you during a private meeting with you that you would give me some explanations as to what you were doing, and you proceeded to show me a list. And I handed that to two of the people here. Could you take, and for the public and for people here, to try to make us understand this? Because I look at the math index, and you're asking, or you're telling me that in 2025, you are going to increase math index by 3.4 points to 59.7, which is an increase of 6%.
Correct.
So if I take that 3.4 off of the 59, obviously I'm down into around 55 position. And then on the English, which I asked you this evening, you want to go up 5%, 3 points up to 64.6. If you Google the town of New Milford against the 169 school districts within the state, we keep falling in the 50, 54, 55% area. And we've been doing that for years. And we've done it when we had 5,000 kids in the school. We did it when we had 4,000 kids in the school. and now we're down to 3,580. At that same time, and you did present that to us today by email, in 2014, 2015, we had 4,362 students, and we had 320 teachers. In 2024, 2025, we're down to 3,580 for a population, but we still have 320 teachers, whether they be teachers or, I don't know, could be principals, et cetera, that aren't teaching. So here's the bottom line. We're now at, my calculations are correct, we've got 632 SPED children, of which 36 of them are out of the school system that we ship out.
Correct.
There's got to be a light in the end of the tunnel because we're getting people moving here to put it into the SPED program. And that's well known. It's also well known, or at least rumored throughout the whole town, that we've got people that really shouldn't be in the school system. That they either are staying at an aunt's house, a next door neighbor's relative or whatever. And I think you're starting to address that.
Sure, oh, for
I
sure.
want you to, yeah,
Yes.
I probably want you to elaborate on that as the evening goes on, because that becomes a serious problem. We toured the Hill and Plains School with a great principal over there, and also in Northville. But we have a large influx of diversified kids, probably close to 45%, and that probably is going to grow. And as you explained to me, the preschool, kindergarten through third grade, some of those kids have never been to school at all since they've entered this country. And that presents a really serious problem because they are so far behind. And by the time they get to high school, I don't know if they're ready for college or not. So they're going to go out on our streets. I have a couple other questions. One is, you don't have to tell us tonight, but I'd like that information, is what is the percent of absentee in the school system? I've heard as high as 40% in the day. And you're showing me on the printout that you had chronic absences 20%, and you're trying to drop that to 13.8% per day, which would be great if 40 is the answer. The other thing I'd like to know is how many kids in this town are homeschooled? Do we have that information? Is it public?
Well, it's hard to know because there's no requirement that the parent register with us if they homeschool their children.
Okay.
So we do know the number of forms that we get when parents withdraw their student or they say they intend to homeschool the child.
Right.
But there's no requirement that they turn in a form to us.
When they get a GED or a high school diploma or diploma from the state, is that registered anywhere? Can we have that number? Those kids actually graduated?
We can get that for you. I don't know for sure if there's a number that says this child was homeschooled and they got a GED. That would be, I don't know if the state reports on that.
Okay.
Because there isn't a reporting requirement for children who are homeschooled.
Aren't there some children, excuse me, in a homeschool that still have to take classes in high school?
No, homeschooled children are
Every
homeschooled.
single course.
Yeah, they are not registered as part of New Milford Public Schools or any school, public school district in the state.
I have friends down in Georgia who homeschool their kids, but certain classes must go to.
In Connecticut, that's not true.
Where Sal was questioning you earlier, if you go on Google and you try to look up proficiencies of different schools in the state of Connecticut and the 169 school districts, one of them from U.S. News has us at 44.4%, a percentage of underserved students who are proficient, and then as high as 53% with the same classification. So I'm not too sure what the heck that means. But a college readiness index shows us at 41.3 out of 100. And I'll give that to pass on. I'm not too sure whether these information that we're getting online is correct. It seems to bounce all over the place, but it still puts us somewhere in that 52 to 55 area out of 169 schools. I don't know if that were 50 52 or 55 from the top, or whether we're 52, 55 from the bottom. I've not been able to get that information.
So I'm not going to respond to this because I haven't looked at it closely, but
That's fine.
I can show you where
That's
we
fine.
fall within. So there are 24 towns with whom we are similar.
Right.
I can show you where we fall.
Okay.
Not right now, but I will certainly send it out to Q&A.
And I'll make a statement after this, but one more thing. How many students drop out of the high school in a course of a year? How many students do not graduate?
So we have to look at it over 4 years and 6 years.
That's fine.
Let me just get that for you so I can give you the exact number. So it's approximately, over a 6-year rate, it's approximately about 8% of students who drop out.
That's 8 out of 100.
Correct.
I'm not good in math.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the other thing is, I don't want anybody here on the town council or the board of finance to get a bad rap. Students or children of anybody's is our #1 priority. That's our biggest asset in this town. These are the children that are going to fill these seats 20, 30 years from now. I hope anyway, if I can keep them in this town. However, the ones that graduate from high school, that do go on to college, for some reason don't stay here. They leave. If it's a boy, well, he left and he's down in San Antonio. We go down there and see him every once in a while. If it's a girl, the mother wants to go with the daughter. So the house is sold and they move on. And that's a shame. But I'd like to take and have a lot more children here in the Milford stay. And when I go out on the town and I go to different blue collar businesses and I ask our owners, are they hiring our kids for different jobs? Some of them will sit there and say, Murph, I give them a simple math question that I can do in my head within minutes. And they're sitting making circles, squares, triangles, ripping up the paper and starting over again.
That's called new math.
That's called new math. And there's got to be a point sooner or later that has to end. And I don't want to give Trump or that administration a bad name. I want to stay right here in New Milford. This is my town. I'm not Washington, D.C. I'm here. I want to protect our kids. But at the same time, something's got to change. We got to go back to basics. We got to have basic English. We have to have basic math. Not Common Core, but basics. And we got to establish a patriotism in our children, a work ethics. And that's another problem that I have with some of the employees here. They go, the kid doesn't show up for work. He's a half hour late this day, 15 minutes the next day. I yell at him. Okay, he comes in for one day on time. The next day he's late again. So the only thing that our dropouts or our undereducated kids can do is fast food service, right? Jockeying dishes down the Abbey or Italian Me or whatever. So those kids are at a disadvantage if they lose their job because they have to go to another place. Well, there's just so many other places to go to before you're out of employment. So we do have a low employment rate. People attest to that. But economic growth has to change here. We need to bring in better businesses for employment because we've got to keep the kids that you're teaching here. And I don't know, the lady this evening talked about the Pledge of Allegiance. I remember sometimes in this country that they took Pledge of Allegiance out of the school systems. Remember? I remember that. So yes, I'm glad to see that back. Other than that, I'll support a budget, which I have in the past. I had Miss Fulman back there one time. I almost drop over on the floor when she thought I was going to say no. But I probably will support the budget, but I want some type of guarantee from you that these numbers are going to go up next year. Because I may not be around but one more cycle. But if they don't go up after 55 or whatever, then I don't care what you put before a budget, I'm going to cancel it. And I'll talk every Republican on this town council and every Republican on the Board of Finance to do the same. There's got to be a light at the end of the tunnel. But people here in New Milford cannot afford these taxes that keep continuing. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Diane?
Thank you. So, Paul, they can't even make change when they're trying to give you change at the restaurant, yeah. But that's young adults, kids, it's everything. And I saw a terrible statistic not too long ago, I can't remember if it was 48% or 46%, but about that percentage of people who graduate from high school never read another book. Never read another book. So clearly knowledge and advanced learning is not valued. Anyway, I wanted to say thank you very much for your presentation. It was excellent. I had asked for the information on the high need students and the unfunded mandates. Very illuminating information. I think it was extremely helpful along with everything else that you have here. So I have a couple of simple questions. Out of district students who have decided to come to New Milford, how many do we have?
Tell me what you mean by that.
Like someone who lives in Sherman.
Oh, so we do have, how many Sherman students at New Milford High School?
Sherman projected enrollment for next year will be down to 36.
Down to 36?
Down to 36. When I started in Milford Public Schools around 2016, that number was at 103 approximately.
Oh, wow.
They have a much reduced population though. That's not, part of it is students might be deciding to go to New Fairfield or another school. However, Sherman as a whole has a lower student population for K-12.
Sure, okay. And what are they charged? If it costs us $22,500, then what are they paying?
Yep. So there's a separate agreement for Sherman tuition. In 25-26, they will be paying $14,847 per. That does not include transportation They pay for their own transportation to New Milford. It also doesn't include special education expenses. We bill that separately if students from Sherman attending here require special education services.
You bill that independently to them?
Yes.
To the Sherman Board of Ed.
Yes.
Sherman Board of Ed.
Yes, and the transportation as well. So it's not as if parents have to drive their child here. Sherman Board of Ed pays their bus contract.
Okay, great, thank you. Another one, let's see here. You have a part-time teacher who is, yes, replacing the ESS?
A full-time social worker is replacing ESS.
Full-time, okay.
Correct.
So one person replaced that whole organization?
So ESS has one clinician currently at Schaghticoke, and so it's a swap out of our own social worker for the ESS clinician.
Okay, is there a cost savings with
Correct.
that?
Yes.
Can you tell me how much?
Roughly 63,000-ish.
63,000
$63,000
difference. Wow, that was a good choice. There was something else. Let's see here. Oh, what does the school medical advisor do?
Oh, so so by the statute, you have to have a school medical advisor. So let's say there's an outbreak of head lice. That person will tell you what to do and how to isolate it, or if we have a question about, here's a student who has a broken leg, what accommodations might that person suggest? So they don't examine kids. If we have any questions, or our nurses or our nurse coordinator has a question, they ask the school medical advisor if it's a specific medical question.
So, are they shared among districts, or is this a full-time person?
Oh no, it's just a stipend for the person.
I think it's Dr. Hack.
I don't know what that means, Dr. Hack.
It is Dr. Hack, but it's a small stipend.
He's a pediatrician.
Oh, okay. I didn't raise my kids in
But
here.
how does, not to
It's
interrupt,
$5,000 stipend that we pay to him per year.
but what does he do? Show up when you call him?
We call him for consultations. Yeah, we call him on the phone. Yes.
Don't you have a nurse though?
We do have nurses in the schools, yes, but the statute requires you to have a school medical advisor as well.
And how's it, who advises that? Who demands that?
The
State.
That's Connecticut state law.
Do they feel that it offers a different opinion, or
What did you say? Sorry.
do they feel that it offers a different opinion than perhaps the nurse?
It's maybe a more expert opinion, yeah, depending on whatever the case might be.
Thank you.
Joe and then Alex. Joe?
Sure.
To answer your question, Paul, homeschool students don't need to take a GED and they don't need to register the diploma with the state. Just a heads up. So, my question is kind of a two-parter.
Sure.
Last year at this time, right before the budget was finalized, Mayor Bass saved us a good deal of money on the insurance premiums. The town portion of that was removed from the budget. The Board of Ed portion was given back to you guys.
Yep.
I believe it was $282,000 or $283,000.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to tell me how that was allocated? Because it wasn't, presented as part of the budget last year. And
Sure.
then is the overall increase this year reduced because of that unanticipated income?
I'll answer the first part, and then Mr. Giovanni
Sure.
asks the second.
Thank you.
So the answer to your question is actually right on that slide.
Okay.
So I took the K-3 state-required literacy materials out of the 25-26 budget, and I will use the insurance funds that we have in that insurance line this year to pay for that.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I couldn't hear.
Oh,
Sorry.
my answer or his question?
Your answer.
Oh, so my response was we will use the insurance money for the K-3 literacy curriculum materials that I've reduced from the 25-26 budget.
Okay, so it was not to hire any other teachers or personnel?
No.
All right, good, thank you. And then you had another.
Yeah. Yep. So on the health insurance number, when we projected it out for next year, we started with the current year's number, backed out the $282,292 first, so it didn't get carried forward. And then in the superintendent's proposed, we had projected at that time a 8% increase. And between the superintendent proposed and the board adopted, we needed to up that, and the town upped theirs as well to 9.5% increase as per our actuarial. So that's how we got where we are now. To answer your first question, it was not compounded upon, it was backed out before we applied the percentage next year.
All right, next question. That it for now, Joe? Yep. Alex, and then Brian.
This is his question. I apologize.
I'm going to stand up because Janet can't see me.
I can stand up.
We can't see you.
Hi, folks, behind the podium.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is a very responsible budget, a difficult budget. Last year's was difficult as well.
Every year is difficult. This body and this town have a history of really cutting it close, if not too much. And catching up when you have other incidentals like COVID in the middle of all that takes extra. What we saw in the schools last year on our tours versus what we saw in the schools this year on our tours was drastically different. I can tell you all the right things are happening, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. The unbelievable, I can't even describe how I felt going through each one of those schools this year compared to just last. So I know the right things are going in the right direction. And I think as a community and as a body, we need to 100% support what you all feel you can do with. And I know it's not what you would prefer. But you're being very responsible and conscientious. Last year too, I know that was difficult. You're doing the right things to get the job done. I will say to you, if you need something because we hit another wall, then we need to talk about what we can do to help. But this budget needs to be supported, and this is a community that needs to support. Most of the people in New Milford do not see what goes on in the schools, do not see the level of needs of our children. The number of English language learners is huge. This is a number that far out impacts everything that goes on, because every child needs extra care, and so do their families. And you're doing that. So how do you do that with less money? You can't. So what I'm saying is I really appreciate the hard work the Board of Education put in scrutinizing your budget. You really spent a lot of time on it. You're the professionals, you're the trained ones, you know what you're talking about. And I think that as a community, we better start showing support for our schools in a very positive way, or we're going to continue to see bad numbers. Okay? You can't grow if people don't think you care, because you're not going to keep the good teachers and administrators in a system that won't support it. That's it. No questions, you answered them all during your process.
Ryan. And Sal.
We have them speak up.
So the difference there is the Sherman contract, they pay for their own transportation.
No, he's got to finish answering the question, yeah.
Yep, so.
Why are they paying less?
He's answering the question.
So, when I quoted the $22,500, that's just a straight calculation, right? Taking the total budget number and dividing it by the number of students.
And their children are paying less than us.
That, when you take the Sherman agreement, it is not supported by every dollar in our budget book because there's no transportation cost and there's no special education costs. And the Sherman agreement, there's a separate agreement for Sherman, who sends our kids to us. It is less than the tuition amount that I quoted earlier, and it is less. The current agreement with Sherman is it's a 3-year contract, and it continues its current year, next year 25-26, and then it ends its last year's 26-27. And there are increases each year in that contract.
In addition, just as a reminder to everyone, the Sherman tuition goes to the town. That is not revenue on the Board of Ed side.
Okay. Sal?
All right, so I have one statement actually before we get so enthusiastic about how much money we have to spend north of 22,500. Speaking of which, do you know how much Immaculate High School costs?
I could look it up, I don't know. off the top of my head.
20,000. I got the bill. I'm Roman Catholic, so my son goes to the Roman Catholic schools, and it's an A school. It's absolute A school, right? And it's about 2,500 less to what we offer to high school students. So
We educate every child who lives in New
Right,
Milford Public
exactly.
Schools.
So we're educating.
We educate every child.
Right, but we're educating them, I don't know, D+ level for 22,500, while the other schools are doing the same thing for 20 grand. That's a fact.
As long as they can select who comes in.
That's a
Yeah.
fact. It's a fact. I have a questions to Mr. IT Department Director.
I'm going to take the questions.
Fine.
Yep.
Professional services. I'm looking at a professional service. It's $446,000. Let's say $447,000. What is it?
We got that. And that might be something that we send you a big list of things.
I just want to hear it. What is it? It's a lot. I work for a company that's 50,000 plus people. If I showed that bill to my boss, I would probably have to look for another job. Next one.
Can I ask what page you're looking at in the Board of Ed budget book?
We're looking at 69. So you broke it down, the operating expenses. You have the first thing, major code, when you have a major object code. And the professional services, I know what it is. I'm in that business. That's why I'm asking this question, right? So you have the way it works, right? So you have your people that work. They're supposed to be skilled to do the things. Then you have obligations, like for the professional service. You call them when you don't have knowledge of something, whatever. They have a support. So we're talking about $500,000 also, almost for professional service. Do you know how much town requested professional services? $29,000.
School IT is a little bit different. So
Really? What's the difference? IT is
Well,
IT.
not
I am in this business.
Yeah.
I am in this business. IT is IT. It's a scale. I got that, but it's IT. John?
We can get you a list of them. Right off the top, some of the items that are contained with.
I have him here, page 70. So your 69 shows almost $500,000. You go to next page, professional services. you have some, I have no idea, it's all broken up supposedly, because I think 69 is the prelude to 70, where you break things. So for instance, I don't even know what is this? You have another item, 32,200 for professional services, and that's 84,000. And you're asking, let's say 83,000. You get a little decrease in there. But anyway, so all in all, it's a million, over $500,000.
So on page 70,
Yeah.
there are 4 lines that are going to total the professional services on page 69.
Right.
That is the 6th line on page 70, the 7th line, the 8th line, and the 9th line.
Can you index it that way, man? Which one?
So it's the dollar amount that starts with 82,700 plus 4,000 plus 3,500 plus 2,000. I'm sorry, 264,475.
Okay, if you can give me the object numbers.
53200.
1 second, 53200. Okay, so, but that's additional to the professional service you have in 69, which is 446, almost $447,000.
What I'm trying to explain is that the total on page 69
Yes.
is the total of lines 6, 7, 8, and 9 on page 70.
Okay, so you list professional services twice. It looks like you booked them as a one item, which is called professional services, which in total is about $500,000 and I don't know, $20,000. And then you're saying that you're itemizing this further in some other things. So it doesn't look like you're doing this. Anyway, so if you have professional service, what the hell is other services or tax services? That should be all professional services. Tax services are $223, $241,000. You have a skilled people, you have a professional services, and you're adding tax services on top of professional service. Absolutely makes no sense. And I negotiate those things day in, day out in corporations. So what is tax services for $241,000? Actually, it's going to go up to 64.
So some of these include our telephone service.
Now you have a different item for telephone. Our telephone service is 5300. You have another item that's 40 grand. You have something that says tax services on top of professional service, I guess.
Yep.
On top of people.
These comprise mostly our licensing agreements from GoGuardian to Omnidata to Jamf for Apple, Go for Pack for G Suite. We can give you a list of them. There are probably programs and support for programs. The breakout for those 4 line items, there are...
This is a mess, I can tell you right now. Again, town is requesting $29,000 for professional services. Granted, they have a contractual services, which is what you're talking about, licenses and all that nonsense. That's pretty much what it is, right? So if you said contractual or licenses, but you kind of break this down, which makes no sense in the way it's indexed, professional services, because it's all mess. It's hard to read it. It's very hard to read it.
They're broken down as per the uniform chart of accounts.
No, it makes no sense. I said, I'm analyzing this. I have to have something like this for my boss every year. This makes absolutely no sense. It looks to me like you're asking once for $446,000, then you're asking the tax services item 53500, $264,000. Then you're going yet to another on top of professional service, general repairs. What the hell that is? Then you have a instructor repairs. What the hell that is? Then you have tax supplies. I get that one. It's a different item, but it makes no sense. Yet, item 5442020 actually, lease copiers. That should be part of your licensing agreement, because this is how you work under the contract, right? Your all the licenses, including copiers, which is still a lot, $117,000 for that stuff.
Would you be so kind as to explain the uniform chart of accounts? It's not something we're making up.
Yeah, so...
I'm not saying making much, this doesn't make any sense.
No, in Appendix A2 in the budget book, it shows the uniform chart of accounts, and the copiers specifically are not part of that. They're separate, right? As you pointed out, they're on the second line with object code 54420, and that's because they are leased specifically. So they have to be charged that account code because they're not a.
I'm arguing the fact how you indexed it, right? You first, 69, you're saying professional service. Okay, I got it. It says salaries. I got it. Right, makes sense. Then you go to the next one. You're supposed to itemize them. So let's say you have professional services, and you go, I don't know, something, parentheses, a bullet, something like this, and under that you basically, highlight professional services, and you go underneath what it is. Yet on page 70, you still list professional service again as an item for $82,000.
Yep, that's just general professional services that are not in service, other service, or tech services.
Professional services, professional services. You itemize. How do you come up with the numbers? What do you want to do at some point? By the way, that's one of the areas the town IT and school IT should be working together, because licensing, I get it, is expensive, but when you negotiate a bulk of licenses, whatever, as a bigger audience, so to speak, your prices are going down. Again, you're asking for $29,000. A town is asking for $29,000 professional services, and contractual services are 200 for something thousand, whatever. It's more than half of what you asking. So, and yesterday, was it yesterday? No, the day before, I did ask a IT director, how many switches do you guys have? Equipment pretty much, because Cisco is costing you the most money. The telephone, the switches, all that stuff is very expensive. I get it. But they have the same amount of switches you do, about 38. Yet they pay more than half of it. Less than half of what you're paying. How is that so? Again, that's something we can look at this, but it makes no sense.
I can get you the breakout of all the professional services within information technology, but I want to make clear that the number requested, $354,675.
Which page?
Of page 69 of professional services. The $354,675 request is made up of the 4 items on page 70. There is no duplication. If you take the 82,700 plus the 4,000 in line 7, plus the 3,500 in line 8, plus the 264,475 in line 9, that's where you get the total. There's no duplication here. We're not asking for the same money
using
twice.
professional services twice. I'm not going to argue this. However you call it, the index makes no sense whatsoever. Anyway, that's one thing. You're still way above what the town is paying for the professional services, including the contractual. And about the same, we're talking about the same level of support is on IT on our side, because IT here has to support all the different departments. You have different schools, I get it. Now, FTEs, full-time employees. School has 9 FTEs from the technology department, right? And it costs down $446,969. I'm sorry, so the salaries I was messing up before. So what I was saying before about the professional service, the $446,000, actually I messed it up with salaries. So I take that back.
It's 354,
Correct.
675.
Salaries. Let's go salaries. You have a 9 FTEs. Town has 3 FTEs, full-time employees in IT department. Now, I did ask specifically Director David whether or not he has a secretary. No secretary. You guys have a secretary for what, 55, 56,000? He doesn't make. How much does the IT director make? Full, with all the ads and everything else. How much does he make? Full salary. I have a list here. It said 129,029 cents. No, dollars.
That's the base, right? We discussed
Right.
that was the base.
What's the full compensation?
That's something that we'll send. We don't have that right here. We can send that to you. Our original conversation, as you know, is about the base, and that's what we provided.
So you deduct, what is it, 129.29 out of 446,969. I was doing my calculation. It's about 317 something. On town, I can tell you what town makes, right? IT director makes $107,000. We have it itemized. You don't here. I don't know how much these people make. By the way, I don't even know they need it. So the system admin makes $64,000, which is kind of low if you ask me for this people. But anyway, support specialist makes $55,000. I'm looking at this. You have 9 FTEs, and I have no idea how much they make. I just don't.
We can get you the individual salaries for those. Some of those are not, one of those is the director, some of those are non-bargaining positions, some of those are actually the techs or within the secretarial bargaining unit.
Yeah, so next budget or something, I would like to see this itemized and this whole thing be fixed, because from the indexing point of view, you would have a problem if KPMG came to your place one day or the Deloitte would. I can tell you right now. If they audit ever. Some companies like this, I don't know if you're dealing with those, but
we do go through an audit.
We have clean audits every single year.
Like KPMG for 4 weeks? KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, what else is in there?
We use the auditor that the town employs.
Okay, so they audit it. Anyway, it makes no sense to me. Wait, so if you can provide that thing, and maybe next time if you itemize those things, the salaries, how much those people make, because we have everything what the town people make. Again, you have 9 people to run IT, including secretaries, and the town has 3 people and do the same job with the 3 people. So that's a problem, I think. The professional services, again, it's much higher for about the same similar network infrastructure, basically. You're using the same components. You're using Cisco.
Not the same number of devices, though, right?
The devices, you can program them, and they're going to do whatever they want to do. Well, you need to fix them. I get that one. Everything is remote, right? I can remote any computer in a school using RDP, for instance, and do it from home. It doesn't matter. It's so automated nowadays. It's not even funny. Even the Cisco switches, you're buying licenses for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're buying basically if something happens and you have a crisis situation, which in the financial companies, it makes sense, right? Because if you work for the bank or something, I don't know, Swift line goes down, you have to restore it in 5 seconds. In the municipalities and schools, you don't deal with the critical data. You don't deal with the market data feeds or anything like this. I'm just giving you the comparison, right? Where the price is coming from, for the equipment licensing and everything. Anyway, be that as it may, I'm not gonna hijack this thing. I would like to see itemized how much people make, full salaries, all those 9 people. I think secretary is listed here as a 54 and 849. So I appreciate it. I don't know. I guess that's it.
Thank you, Sal. Joe?
Okay. Hi again.
Hi there.
Sal, that's a lot of information, man. There's so much information there. I do have a question regarding what he was saying there, though, and I think you guys use a uniform chart of accounts that's standardized by the state, right? Because that's part of your audit?
Yes.
So that you can report to, I was trying to find it on my phone when Paul was talking. There is a state reporting agency that grades all the schools, right? Isn't it STAR or something like that? Or the state does they report on the schools, and it shows where you are.
They use a uniform chart of accounts because all the schools within...
No, I know, but separately, right? So you have to report into the state database for the accounting, right? But then in terms of school performance...
sorry.
Right?
EdSite.
What is it?
EdSite.
EdSite. So, Paul, go on EdSite, but the problem is that the EdSite data is always...
A year behind.
Right, so it's always a year behind. And then they use what's called a DIRG, right? A district
reference group.
A district reference group, where they adjust the towns based on the municipal and district size, as well as the financial and all of those components that have an influence, because the largest driver of student performance is actually parental involvement, right? And typically in poorer communities, you have less parental involvement, so you have a lower standard of performance in the district. Now, to kind of tie that into my point that I'm trying to make is that if we continually increase the school budget, that strains the people at home so that they have to make more money, so they can't pay attention to their kids as much, and they don't perform as well, right? And also when they're not getting attention at home, which I'm sure as we all know, right? Our kids all act out, you know? I mean, especially when I'm not home for 3 or 4 days because I'm at meetings, right? I go home and my kids are like, you know, climbing my back, sometimes literally trying to get my attention, you know. Sorry, I'm kind of digressing there. But that information is kind of available out there, and you know, if you want, I can send it to you. I have it going back for like.
Joe, the
I'm happy
question,
to send, yeah.
Numbers jive. That's the problem.
Well,
Several different agencies do that, but they don't seem like they're coming together with one.
It's, I know, but they don't, and they never do
That's
because
why
it's
I-
all.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of happy when I understand this.
I did have a question about. I'm trying to find out on my notes here about the 10 cuts, right? How many, like, so when you chose to cut 10 positions, right? How did you make that decision? Was it based on the number of students that we were losing?
We looked at the enrollment for the K-5 particularly, we looked at the enrollment projection and then the current enrollment to see
Right.
what the impact on class size would be.
Okay. And based on that, that's where you made the cuts,
That's
right?
correct.
All right. And are we adding any administrators this season?
We're making someone who's 0.6, 1.0.
1.2. So
Yep,
okay. All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mary Jane? Then Murph, and then Katie.
the town council for 20 years. And I can probably tell you that probably at least 14 to 15 of the years that I've been on the town council, the Board of Education budget has been cut, drastically cut. So if anybody wants to put blame on anybody, it's the town cutting the Board of Ed budget. So you can say whatever you want, but this is a fact, and you can look it up. You can go all the way back there, and you can check. I want to say that I give a lot of credit to your teachers. I support their union. I think the union is one of the best things that happened to teachers, and the nurses took notice of the teachers, and the nurses unionized. And because those two professions were basically women-dominated, they were discriminated against. And now we have unions. I am so happy we have the unions, and I'm so happy they have all their benefits. I was thinking of something else, but I don't know, it kind of slipped my mind, because I think there's been a lot of misinformation going around here tonight.
Katie, can Joe say one thing quick, and then?
Sure,
Okay.
quick, Joe.
Has the Board of Education budget
Yes.
ever been lower in the next year after the current budget?
You can't
Has
do
the
that.
budget ever been cut?
You can't go lower because of the MBR, the minimum budget requirement.
Right, so just to set the record straight, there is a state requirement that does not allow the town to ever cut the Board of Education budget except under 3 specific conditions, right?
That's correct, yep.
There has to be a reduction in.
Well, I
So
guess
what was
we
the
broke
statement
that
before?
mold.
What was the statement before, though?
Huh?
Never mind.
We broke that mold. Sorry, you haven't been here, so you don't know what you're talking about.
No, they just confirmed. What are you talking about?
No.
They just confirmed they cannot be passed.
The
They
Board of
cannot.
Ed
Yeah,
Katie?
budget has been cut. I can tell you
It's
that
very
for sure.
rare.
Katie,
What is she talking about?
and then Brian. Katie?
Sal, Ann? Mary Jane? Okay.
Yep, and then Chris.
And Chris. Thank you for providing all of this information, and I have very high regard for teachers and admins and everything you do. A couple of questions. One of the biggest things that has been talked about, especially this past year or so, is the bus issue.
Sure.
People who live on a certain route say, you know, that they're doomed because that bus is never, as you heard before, you either have to stay home with the child or work early. Now, according to your book here, your contract with the bus company went up almost $177,000.
Yep.
And the total amount for this year is almost $5 million. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're paying a bus company $5 million, and you mentioned earlier, Superintendent, that you were in some negotiation or whatever. I don't have any children getting on a bus, but I can tell you that for $5 million, every person who doesn't have a bus where it's supposed to be has a right to gripe. And
I know we don't have tons of drivers. I see that sign on every place I go. However, what I do see is in other communities around us, the pay per hour is higher. Now, I don't know if that's what they tell you. I think, what's the name of the bus company?
All Star?
Yeah, All Star, yeah.
Transportation?
Well, they're not so much stars, according to a lot of our parents, and I'm sure you hear about it. But this isn't just about the parent having to be delayed or come home early. The problem with this is it's also upsetting to a child. Now, I know we're all adults here, and we all have certain routines. Like when I get up, I like to get my coffee, sit down, start to look at the paper. If you interrupt that right away and I don't get my coffee, it's like everything just seems to be off for the next couple of hours. Imagine what it's like when it's a kid. And I just have a hard time, and I'm not asking you to try to explain it because I know you're in negotiation. But something needs to be done going forward. This is a huge amount of money. And when we talk about poor kids, you know, their parents don't have the time or whatever. I had a statistic I gave the other night at our meeting, which a lot of people have called me and written to me to say they didn't believe it. 44% of the people in the town of New Milford are what we call Alice, or they're hard struggling people, or poverty. Now you know that, right?
Correct.
And that statistic is a little bit old, so it's even higher now.
I'm sure.
For the state of Connecticut, it's also ridiculously high. So these are people who don't have a choice. Joe's very lucky. He has a lovely wife, and she can wait for the bus or go pick them up.
She's a superstar.
But she is a superstar. So for the people who have to be someplace, or they're going to be replaced, if you're a laborer, a landscaper, whatever you are, you work in a kitchen, they're not going to put up with you saying, geez, the bus was late again. So what does that mean? That means the child doesn't go to school because they take it to somebody down the street, or they take it with the grandmother, or maybe the kid comes to work, I don't know. But the point being is it is an impact on the child's education. It's an impact because the parent's upset, and we all know what that means. So I'm just saying to you, please do something about straightening out this bus company. And if that means you need to go to another company, I don't know if that's even possible, but that's your job. So I'm going to tell you, it's a huge issue in this town. And when it comes to your budget, we all know everything else in here might be wonderful. They might love their education, but if they still have a complaint, and every night they talk about it, the day that bus isn't where it's supposed to be, they're not happy about voting for you. I'm just being honest. They're just not going to be happy about voting for your budget. So that's number one to say. And the other question is, I see this line here, property services in every single place. Can you tell me, does that mean physical property, like the lawn, or the tables, the chairs? What is it?
Yep.
Yes?
You got that?
Oh,
Yes.
you can, or that's what it is?
He will explain it, yes. He's going to explain that to you.
In the budget book, Appendix A2, all the property services are listed, and that includes contractual trash and recycling pickup, repairs and maintenance, grounds maintenance, technology-related repairs.
Okay, can I stop for a second? What's ground maintenance, meaning the actual ground?
Grounds, yes, within
And you
the
said,
facilities.
what was the other, right before that?
General repairs and maintenance in
That's it,
facilities.
okay. Just tell me, what does that mean? Like window breaks, doorknobs loose?
Yep, door repairs, lots
Okay.
of things within the district.
There's a thing about these categories, and it's not just you, I've said this to all the departments. A general category of stuff gets out of hand, right? And I really would like to see, and maybe you've got millions of items in there and that's too hard, but on the other hand, we're asking people in this town to pay a tax that some of them cannot. They just cannot do it. And it's a pressure, it's a stress, they're upset, which boils down to their kids. So let me not even worry about the adults. Please, could you give all of us a list of what that $4,447,000 is all about?
Sure, we could supply.
Right? And I understand that means that there are various people who handle those things, right? You have a guy who mows the lawn and somebody else fixes a doorknob, maybe. And that, I assume, means that in your maintenance facility number, you're not including this, or you are? Because again, these are sort of overlapping things to me. You mentioned something that I would say, you said tech, right? So does the IT department have a line item in there for that?
Yep, those are all covered under the 5-4 series, and they, like you said, they are littered all through departments. If you're referencing the $4 million number, that's on page 6 in the budget book.
That's what I'm looking at.
And that encompasses professional services across the district, whether it be, property services.
Property services, right.
Right.
I
That
saw
is-
the, I'm sorry, I
yeah.
said the wrong number. It's the 1,000,003.
1 million. Yep,
But
that
when
is-
I go to the back here where you have all your stuff added up, the property services are in every single department or whatever. So could you just like give us a breakdown? I mean, the people who give you the numbers that they want you to put in your budget obviously have to tell you what they want the money for.
Sure, there's backup for every number in
Yeah,
there. Yep.
just if you could supply that, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
And I just want to say, I know all your teachers work hard. I don't know all of them. I know many of them, and they are genuinely, they live to help these kids. It's not just a job for everybody, and that's really nice. New Milford is very fortunate in that regard. However, our student population is down, and the budget goes up. I realize you can't go below a certain number, but I just feel that the percentage of raise that we have across the board in the town, and the school budget is always higher. I say always, I'm not around 100 years, but it's usually higher than the town budget. They're all for different things. I'm not trying to compare them, but I think we all should take in our mind when we sit and look at this and deliberate that we are asking people who, some have not even come close to coming out of COVID, but we're asking people who are struggling every day. This is all levels. I mean, we have people who make $200,000 and they're struggling. Maybe they have a lot of children, they have high mortgage, whatever, it's not my business. But the bottom line is it isn't easy. We're all involved. I think that we all need to take a look, step back, and remember that there are people who go to a food bank because they have to, not because they want to, they have to, okay? And we all know that food prices are going up, and I suppose gasoline will go up pretty soon. But when you have a couple kids at home, or even for yourself, if somebody tells you it's $10 for a dozen eggs, you just kind of walk away and say, what am I doing? What's the world happening? What's going on? So I want us to think that way. It's not a contest, and we all know what we want to do. We have wants, we have needs, and we all know that at some point we've not added something into our budgets that we wanted to. And all I'm saying is please look at this budget and think about the people that you are really serving by keeping their children safe and educated, because they're the ones that are out working, trying to pay for it. And I don't think you're being cavalier about your budget at all. I just say this because it's really a true fact that people around us, people in this room, we know, we might not know them, but there are people sitting next to you all the time who are worried about where the heck the next money for their gas tank or their mortgage or rent is going to come. And that's a sad situation that hopefully we will get a little better. Hopefully things go in cycles. But I hate to see us thinking in depression times mindset that's the way it is. And when I see eggs at $10, I think, whoa, this is bad sign. So thank you for the information. If you'll get me the list of what goes on and give me some idea that I can go back to the people that ask me about what the heck's going on with the buses. I mean, I'd love to tell them to call you, but I know you're busy. But
Please have them call me. That's my job. Truly.
Right. Well, some have, I know that. So, but I thank you for your breadth of information in your binder. And my last comment is, I'm not a person who likes doing things the way they've always been done, but I got to tell you, these binders, so yesterday. Binders, and copying on one side. I'm all about efficiency, paper, and things. So I know you're in the binder world, but.
So Brian, before you go,
So
could
no-
we have Chris Cosgrove? Chris?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Good evening, Dr. Parlato, administrators, board members. Thanks for coming up.
Hey, Joe, could you put the mic
Yeah,
on there for?
Want to dig in a little deeper. The bus contract. This is a new contract, correct?
We're in the second year of 5.
Second. Oh, okay. So this is an automatic increase.
Correct. Well, it's a contractual
in
increase,
the
yep.
second year. Okay. What sort of metrics are in the contract that will incentivize? I guess what motivation does this bus company have to improve their service level?
So as we mentioned before, there's a clawback that we get when there are late runs. So it affects their bottom line for sure.
So how much is that?
Let's see.
It's half of the cost of the bus for that day, if it needs to run a third tier.
So give them.
I'm sorry, someone just came on the phone. Can you mute yourself because I'm getting feedback here?
It's roughly half the cost of the bus for that day if they have to run a third tier, which is about $250, $230 roughly.
Okay. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot to me anyways. And I think based on their performance, I don't think there's been, well, you tell me, has there been an improvement in the late runs?
Has there been an improvement? Is
Correct.
that what you said?
Yes.
It's really, it depends on the time of year, to tell you the truth, Chris. So this week we've had nothing late. But it depends on the week. And it depends on how many drivers they have. It depends on who's on FMLA, who's out sick, if they have people quit. And to clarify a point that was made earlier, so the rate of pay for the drivers in the Milford Depot is established by All-Star Transportation. That's not something that the Board of Ed determines.
No, I understand that. But I guess what I'm getting at, if you looked at, I understand there's different factors on late runs and it varies, but if you look year over year, I mean, are they improving?
We could look, I don't know, you could look year over year. I mean, no.
I would say the performance this year is very similar to last year.
In terms of the number of late runs,
whatever
we metric.
So it sounds like whatever we have in the contract isn't enough to really motivate them. That's my opinion. Okay. So I think I heard this, but correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Parlato. And I'll use the term gift that the Board of Finance gave you last year of the $280K. Did you say that is going to go towards materials in this budget year, the 25-26 budget year?
Those are literacy materials that are part of the science of reading, right to read legislation that are required for us to have.
Okay, so basically this budget avoids what would have been that cost due to that money that you were given last year. Okay, good. Good, I think that's a good use of it, thank you. Another issue I think we have, have we changed at all the process on checking residency?
So certainly we have a policy in place and we have a protocol in place that I think that I sent to you last year. Two things are true. We audit randomly various individuals that we pick at random and we ask them to reprove their residency. And then this year, students who are in grade 5 and going into grade 6, all students will have to reestablish their residency for us. And you can see one of the items that we have proposed is an additional secretary that will not only work in the assistant superintendent's office, but will focus on central registration and residency concerns.
So, I don't know if I've suggested this before, but I was in a district before. They had a very effective way of checking residency, and they would basically contract out to a private investigator. So if there was a thought whether someone was a resident or not, this investigator would check that child and their family out.
We do the same thing.
And-
We check home sales, and then we check it against
Okay.
addresses, and we do contract with a private investigator when necessary.
Okay, because I mean, I think we had an issue, a tragedy in this town, and I think that was avoidable because we had students who didn't belong here. So I think we need to really tighten that up. It's because, I mean, anybody who doesn't belong here, in my opinion, they're basically stealing $22,000 from the Milford taxpayers.
I'm not going to comment on a student situation, but I understand what you're saying about residency.
Yep. Okay. What's the size of the graduating class this year?
Oh boy, probably 302. I can look it up. I can get you the exact number.
Okay. No, that's fine. So when we look at the student population over the 10-year period, and thank you for sending that information out, we basically have 782 fewer students today than we had 10 years ago. So that's, say, over 2 complete class sizes smaller. And in terms of administration and teachers, we have the same amount. And I think that's a real hard thing that people, that residents are really trying to come to grips with. And I understand, yeah, we've got English language learners. That's, the population has changed, and it probably is certainly some more work to educate these students. But, I mean, 782 fewer students in 10 years. And we have the same, and as you pointed out, rightfully so in your presentation, 78% of your costs are salary and benefits. So I just really, call on you guys. You've got to become more innovative on how you deal with this, because we listen to, and Katie kind of touched upon this, we listened to our social services present to us a few nights ago, and there were a lot more people. Their service requests have gone up, and we throw out another 5% increase in taxes to taxpayers, and I'm really afraid of what that's going to do to some people who are on the edge. And you're looking for another $3 million, and in my opinion, it's too much. I think I would like to see a few of these additions in terms of head count go away, but I'm just one person, and I think this is going to be a really tough budget. I think if this is the budget that goes to the public, I think it's going to be a real tough one to pass. But I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Just to clarify, there's 346 students in the current grade 12.
And Brian, before I defer to you, just with Tom or Doug on the phone, do you want to ask any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Brian?
Pete, I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Doug?
Yeah, so I have a question for whoever can answer the question. So is there a full-time custodian during fall sports at night outside?
We'll get that for you. A full-time custodian outside?
Yeah, so during the fall sports when they have football and soccer out there, there has to be a custodian out there, correct?
There are people who are scheduled to work, yes.
Okay. And what time does the custodian stay till at night?
I think 11 o'clock, but we'll get that for you. Let me just confirm that.
Okay. So here's my one issue, and it's going to go back to field use. So when we propose the fields, we propose the fields for the entire public and for anybody in the public and special local sports to use. And so over the years, I've noticed that we're starting to charge our children especially the local sports children who are involved in football, field hockey, so forth, soccer, and we're charging them to come to the fields. Meanwhile, we have high school students, they're playing on one field, and so you have the custodian already there, and now we're surcharging and charging the kids to play there. And it was our intent to when we built the field with taxpayer money, so everybody's paying, that the local sports teams would be able to be afforded the privilege to play there. So I have a real issue with the facilities charging our local students. To me, it sounds like double dipping. So maybe you can explain why we're doing that.
So there are roster fees that are charged, and we have various tiers that are used depending on if it's a youth sports group. If it's a high school group, obviously there's no charge. If it's an outside group that says, hey, I want to have a big jamboree at your field, that's a different rate. And so the youth sports groups obviously pay the lowest rate. Will you explain more about the custodial?
Do you have a number of what you guys collected from the local sports?
Yeah, we have that for the last 3 years. If you give me 1 second, I can get that for you. It's not an enormous amount of money. Was it $12,000? Do you remember? The youth sports.
Well, listen. Again, you guys have your job to do. The BOE always does a great job, and I'm here to support it. I just have, I've had that issue for the last few years. I don't think the taxpayers or the kids should have to go around and sell candy and soap and stuff to play on a field that they're already paying for. I think that that's a privilege that they should have. So I think maybe in the future, you guys could look this over in your next budget and say, you know what? For the amount of money you're making, which is minuscule to $76 million, you can afford the local sports to play on a field that they pay for, and that will help families along the line. So thank you very much.
Yeah, one clarification there that I forgot to mention is that those fees, the roster fees that the youth sports play, is not Board of Ed revenue. We deposit that into the turf field replacement fund, so that eventually.
No, I understand where you're putting the money, and that's fine. But they shouldn't have to supplement money out of their pockets for a field they're already paying for through tax dollars. You guys are contributing, and the town is contributing their tax dollars. I think it's $50,000 per year. So they shouldn't have to, on top of that, pay even more. I understand that you're putting it toward the replacement, but that's something that they've already paying for when they're paying for the field. Maybe you could find another way to generate that revenue through maybe increasing out-of-town teams that come and charge them a little bit more and afford the people, the local organizations to play for free, which it was intended to when we started that committee, that it would be a field for all sports, not just for the high school, for free.
Right. I just want to clarify that it's not revenue. And in the last 3 years, so in 2022 for youth sports fees, it was $46.95. In 23, it was $31.50, and in 24, calendar year 24, it was $2,400. So that's less than
Right.
$10,000 altogether.
Right. But in the scope of things, that amount of money is minuscule to the BOE's budget, where they could probably find another way to generate that revenue and offset costs to parents who already have to incur a price for students to play in a youth sport, and on top of that being charged to come to a field that they already pay for.
Yeah, your point's well taken. I just want to make sure that we all understand it's not revenue on the board side. It goes to the town for a turf replacement.
Brian and then Joe.
I'm going to try and make it very fast. Thank you. Just when I raise my hand, if you don't let me talk, that's because everything I wanted to say. This book has to do with putting our children through school. All the questions asked tonight really come down to, are you, are the students, the parents, the taxpayers getting the best butt for their back to their dollar? I think we should keep politics out of this. I'm glad you have a good union. I hope you do. But that has nothing to do with this.
We have 7 bargaining units in the district, yes.
Albert Shanker, who was head of the UFT from 64 to 84 in New York City, was once asked about the union relationship with kids. He said, I don't care about the kids. I'm a union man. I don't care about kids. Randy Weingarten has proven that by destroying education in New York City for 2 years. All those poor kids were behind, were stuck at home for 2 years. God knows when they'll ever get out of it, if they ever get out. I don't think unions or discussion of unions have anything to do with meetings tonight. I think it should be left out. I think all politics should be left out on meetings.
Joe, and then Paul, and then Rolando.
So it looks like we had 4,335 students in 2014 and 3,498 students in 2024. That's a decrease of 837. Based on some historical budgets, it looks like the per pupil spending went from 13.4 thousand to roughly around 22.4 thousand. That's an increase. That's an increase of $9,000. So I understand you haven't been here for the whole period of that time,
Right.
the whole 10 years. But there's been many studies that have shown that, you know, increasing per pupil spending by like $1,000 per year has shown a 20% increase or a whole grade increase in performance. There's a South Korean study that said the same thing. So why do you think, you know, based on your conversation with Paul, it seems like our rankings have been pretty stagnant. Some things are going up, some things are going down. With this type of increase, why aren't we seeing those performance gains? In your opinion?
I think that slide tells you a lot of what you need to know in the answer to your question. So there's
please illuminate us.
I will.
Yeah.
So there's an increase in students who, in the state's view, are called high need students. Those are students who are special education and get services. Those are students who are free and reduced lunch recipients, and those are students who are learning English for the first time. Right? When you have an increase in those numbers, and particularly in special education, in the severity of the disability that the child might be evidencing, there's an impact to the school district in terms of the level of need, in terms of the dollars that are needed to service those students, and subsequently sometimes an impact on your test scores.
So do you think these studies are skewed and we have a disproportionate amount of special ed and English as a second language students, or do you think the studies are inaccurate and there's no correlation?
I would have to see those studies. I'd have to see them.
You can Google them. I mean,
sure
there's
will,
tons.
yeah.
There's an MIT one, a South Korean one, tons of them.
Yeah, I don't comment on things I don't read.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into specifics on studies. And some studies found there's no correlation.
Mm-hmm.
But so do you think we have a disproportionate amount of special ed students?
No, we're right at the state average. The state average is 17%. Prevalence rate is what it's called, and so we're right there.
So if we're at the averages, then we should be seeing those performance increases because those would be part of any study that's given.
Well, I guess another way to look at it is if you have 18%, that does not account for maybe the severity of the needs. It's just telling you the number of kids that have an individualized education plan or receive special education services.
So you think we have a disproportionate need of high need
I'd
children?
have to look at that. I don't know that off the top of my head. Yep.
Okay.
Joe?
We have an exponential growth in English learners.
Is that like English second language type students?
Correct.
Or? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We call it ESL.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Paul?
Okay. About a year ago, sometime last year, we sat as a roundtable with three of us, town council, board of finance, board of ed, and we were trying to figure out how we could merge something to try to save the taxpayers money. And I think we need to go back to that. I don't think we should be maintaining the buildings with an outside walls, snake plowing, cleaning the buildings, whatever the case may be, but somehow try to save the taxpayers money. The second thing is going to be something that's going to be pertinent here in the future. And I'm not too sure a lot of the elderly know about it, and I didn't even know it. Fixed income people making, there's a couple making $56,000 a year, or a single person making $44,000, is able to go to see the tax assessor and drop their property tax down about $900. Well, there's a lot of people who don't even know that. Probably have to get out of it. But we have an elderly position where it's going to be more than 45% of them There's going to be 65 and above, but we're calling that category. $100 each. And third thing is stop. We go back to my bad math. 8% out of 100 is obviously is 8 kids times 3 year or times $300 for the total of students this year. That's a possibility of 24 kids dropping out of school. I don't think it's the case. You have over 300 kids in the school. You told me 8% or 8 out of 100.
Wouldn't complete, so yeah, at the very end, yes.
That time those kids are going out of school. We have a high number of kids uneducated, dropouts, going back to job, lose their jobs. We're sitting with a very small resource in this town, with a very large budget, and taxpayers can't afford to put more police on it either. So we done that. And that's it for me. Again, you guys are doing the best you can with the competition students that you have. I don't know where we are. We are the public going to recommend on this. You guys sit down and try to figure out something for the future. Because, like I said, like at the end of the tunnel, we have to train.
Rolando?
Yeah. Hey, good evening. First of all, congratulations on the presentation. Great presentation. You guys do a great job. My thing is, I have complaints about a lot of parents in the athletic field, and I was taking a look at the lines. And correct me if I'm wrong. On page 40, you have a $925,000 proposed. And out of that, $514,000 is staff.
Do you know what page are you on, Rolando? Sorry.
40.
40, okay.
Yes, on page 40, the bottom chart, the first 3 lines in that bottom chart are just salaries of that $925,000.
Just salary. So that leaves the rest for everything else. To me, I think they need to take a look at this and try to find other fundings for the athletic department, because you have many parents that have many complaints about how, for example, the girls basketball team had to use boys' uniform from like last year because they were promised new uniforms and they didn't get them. And then you have, you just have a system where there's a lot of concern. So, for example, the softball coach went to the shed yesterday, and he was taking a look at like pitching machines, and there were 5 in the shed, and 4 of them are broken. And then there's repair here that has $11,000 for repairs, but who's that money being paid to? Who's repairing things that go bad or?
That budget is controlled by our athletic director, Mr. Lipinski, so we could follow up and find out exactly what the $11,000 budget.
That's exactly my concern, because there's one person in charge of the entire athletic department, right? Who oversees
There's an
it?
athletic director, yes.
Yeah. He doesn't have like
He reports to the high school principal, who then reports to me.
Okay.
And there, you didn't bring this up, but there is we do have a replacement line in our capital plan for uniform replacements for athletics that's separate from our operating budget that's before you tonight.
I just think that the athletic department is it's a big part of the school, the body, the student body. People are really trying to get scholarships, to go to college, and we have great programs at the high school, for example, like the wrestling, the cross country, but we just need to give more support to if it's the AD that needs it, to the AD, but we really need to take a look at how we can fund this department where you don't have all the students doing fundraisers. Most of these coaches are asking their athletes to raise $350, $500 each to provide for themselves during the year. I'm seeing that eye to eye because I talk to a lot of parents that are involved in the school, and I just think we need to do a better job and take a look deeper into this whole section. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolando. Any other questions?
I just-
Katie?
I was just going to go on what Rolando just said.
Yep.
The United Way had a program, an enrichment program, where we would fund $300 a child for up to 3 children in a family. And one of the reasons that we had that, and we worked through MVP SOS, the people would come through to us, and MVP would work with the coaches. And I don't think I need to tell you that these are the people I was talking about before. They couldn't afford the helmets and the jerseys and things like that. So I didn't pick up on this, Rolando. Thank you for that. I think that I could look it up and tell you if you cared to know, over 3 years or so that we did this, I mean, tons, there's a lot of money that we gave out gladly to get these kids to do this. There was a few violin lessons and ballet lessons, but the majority of it was for sports. And then MVP, without the United Way being involved, is they have other people that donate, and they do the same thing for other people in the town. So if indeed you have, I'm not even sure what PURSER means, P-U-R-S-E-R, but there's a lot of,
services.
what is it?
Purchase services.
Okay, so you've got a lot of money on the director and the non-certified sports and the athletic trainer, and then you're gonna also go for $117,000 on one line to go out and hire and pay for other people. Rolando hit it right on the head. This should not be the human heavy. It should be for the kids. It should be, they should be able to get a jersey to play their sport and not have to cough up that much money. It's just really sad because sports keeps, as you all know, sports keep children out of trouble, and they teach them about socialization, how to have fun with other kids, and this isn't good. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, Rolando. I'm sorry I missed this part on this page. Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, though, student athletes receive a uniform as part of their participation, so.
Well, he just said they have the boys.
I don't know about that.
uniform.
We can certainly get clarity on that, but I'm just saying that they're not paying for their uniform to play on the high school sports teams.
No, but does it have to be a high school sports team when we have, the reason we have the turf field is so the kids can play the sports, and then the kids who can't afford to buy the uniforms don't get to play? I don't know, it just seems like nobody's watching the other side and moving forward with it, but it's all right. I guess you'll let us know how it goes.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Anybody on the phone? Any other additional questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, nobody else on the phone? Okay.
No.
Well, Mayor.
Man, to recess.
Well, we're going to,
Mayor, of
tonight,
course you can.
tonight, if we don't think there's
You definitely can.
Are there no
any
more?
other departments to bring back, then we would then adjourn. And,
Anybody else?
well, first, before we do, thank you, Leslie, thank you, Dr. Parlato, thank you, Anthony, and
appreciate
thank you,
your time
everybody, for
tonight.
coming tonight. Appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
So
And-
maybe not yet.
Anyone second?
Second.
All in favor?
Town Council,
I will.
Mayor made a motion. Do I have a second? Any discussion on adjourning? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.